How you get so big that you hold of this kind?
Hey guys, welcome to this video in a series about balance of the Force, and it's also going to be a conclusion on it. So in the past I've talked about what the light and dark side of the Force are, the nature of good and evil within the Force, if the dark side and light side are inherently evil, the meaning of the Chosen One prophecy. If any of that kind of stuff interests you, click on the thing to take you back to the beginning of the series. Otherwise, this is going to be kind of like a too long, didn't watch summation. But it also means I'm going to jump to a couple of conclusions here that haven't been built up in this video. So if you watch those, it's kind of me showing my work for how I got to here. Basically, the long and the short of it is, I don't think the light side and the dark side are inherently evil. I don't think the light side necessarily represents good, and the dark side necessarily represents bad. I do think the Jedi, for the most part, are good, minus some corruption issues, but ultimately are good, and that the Sith are ultimately evil, but that the Jedi are not necessarily the light side, and the Sith are not necessarily the dark side, and that both of them are kind of missing out on part of the picture when they deny what the other side is doing. In Legends, and to some extent in the new canon, it was believed that the ancient Force users called the light side Ashla, and the dark side Bogan. And I think the language here is important. It's so hard to break from the paradigm of thinking that the light side is good and the dark side is bad. To me, that's just simply not how the Force works. We've seen light side users who are not Jedi, such as Chirrut in Rogue One, and we've seen dark side users who are not Sith, such as Snoke in the new sequel trilogy. If you go into the expanded universe, that list of examples grows immensely. The Jedi and Sith are religions, not aspects of the Force. So here let's talk about language and the nature of translation. So let's say the real words here are Ashla and Bogan. This does come up in Rebels. The Bendu, who is this kind of mythical Force creature that talks to Kanan and Ezra, he does use the phrase Ashla and Bogan to refer to the light side and the dark. Neither Ashla nor Bogan sound particularly good or evil, yeah? But our brains, and especially my Western brain with Western understandings of things, hears light and dark, and suddenly I'm making a lot of assumptions about what a light thing is and what a dark thing is. These are conclusions that folks in Star Wars can jump to as well. The light and the dark sound good and bad because language. It's how they've been translated. But we've seen in Star Wars lore that that isn't always the case. I mean, look at the Prime Jedi that we see in the Jedi Temple in The Last Jedi. That Prime Jedi and the Last Jedi. Anyway, it has a bit of a yin-yang thing going on, and there's light and dark and the mixing of the two, and it makes me think that the Jedi were not always just lightsiders. The light and the dark are two aspects of the same Force. Both are needed. Both can be wielded correctly or incorrectly. The dark side is absolutely used for evil more than the light is, but that doesn't make it evil. The light side is a pen, and the dark side is a sword. Yeah, it's easier to cause pain and destruction with a sword, but it can have a noble cause as well. And yes, a pen seems more peaceful, but
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. Ta-da! It's gone.
Now, as for why it seems like the light eventually comes around and wins the day again, although that could just be the perception of those who write history, it kind of goes back to the saying we have of the pen is mightier than the sword. The pen is more versatile, it can be used for more things, it leads you to kind of think before you act, there's less rash things going on. As we've seen recently, words can hurt a lot too. Just because something seems more peaceful doesn't mean it inherently is more peaceful or better than the alternative. Maybe better in more situations, but not all situations. And yes, a sword is a weapon, but it can also be a tool. You can use it for things other than just simply killing people or warning people not to attack or they will be killed. It can actually just function as a cutting device of whatever happens to need to be cut at that point in time. Actually, let's carry this metaphor a step further and talk about the lightsaber. The lightsaber is a symbol for one who is truly attuned to the Force. It is used by the dark and light alike. Both take great pride in their sabers. The lightsaber is, obviously, a source of light. It can illuminate, it can guide, it can be a beacon, and it can cut and form like a tool. But it can also kill, it can destroy, it can bring hope, and it can take life. The very weapon that both quote-unquote sides use inherently reflects the affinity of those they fight. Because in the Force, there are opposites, but there are not enemies. So what I'm really getting at here is that good and evil exist within the Star Wars universe, but they exist separately from the Force. The Force is life and death, and that life participates in good or evil, but the Force isn't morality, it's balance. Now, to that end, I would argue that the very nature of evil is to disrupt and destroy balance. So, to that extent, evil is in opposition to the Force. Not because of a list of sins and permissible acts as our concept and understanding of religion would dictate, but just in the very nature of, are you trying to extend and prolong life, or are you trying to cause life to meet an unnatural end? Is it something that's working for its own gain solely, or for the good of all? And what I've argued in the past is that the dark side works on a more selfish motivation, and therefore it is easier to use the dark side for evil, because the nature of the dark side is more insular, and it is more about me and what I want and the individual. And evil never really is like, man, I'm just gonna make things better for a whole bunch of people. So something that's going to be working towards an individual is inherently going to be easier to use for evil, but it doesn't have to be evil. If I'm on an airplane and we need to put our masks on and I have a kid sitting next to me, I'm supposed to put my mask on first. Because if I put the mask on the kid first out of selflessness and then I pass out, there's no one there to take care of the kid. If I put my mask on and then put the mask on the kid, I'm around to take care of the kid. It's a selfish act that ultimately can serve a greater purpose. Which is why the dark side can be selfish, but not inherently bad. So if evil arguably stands in opposition to the Force, does that make the Force good? Maybe. The Force is fair. The Force is not evil. The Force is nature. And in nature, there is death and there is consequences. That's where that balance comes in. So as to whether or not the Force is good, I suppose that would have to depend on your definition of good, which is an entirely different discussion for an entirely different time. That's really where I'm going to leave this for now. I hope some of that made sense. I might have brushed over the evil stands in opposition to the Force thing a little quickly. If I did, let me know. I don't mind doing like an appendix kind of video to this series, but I do think it's kind of time to actually wrap this up and move on. If you have more to say, please leave a comment and let me know. I love talking to you guys. Follow us at Port Haven Forums on Twitter, where we're always talking about all kinds of random Star Wars stuff. Visit port-haven.com for more. You can visit forums.port-haven.com for all kinds of Star Wars discussion if you want to talk even more with a much larger group of people. And as always, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.